Hello and welcome to Geek History Lesson. I am Jason, love a postage stamp Inman.
I am Ashley Victoria Robinson. Welcome to your Mind University, because you have stumbled onto the podcast where we take one character, construct, or series of questions from you about popular culture and answer them in an hour. It's a mailbag episode, friends.
It's a mailbag episode. We don't have a theme, but I just made one up. So listeners, we introduced this thing at the beginning of our current quarantine / pandemic / everybody wear mask session of 2020, as we're calling it. And we reached out to you guys for questions. And, you know, since we are now post-Independence Day here in America, and actually, fun fact for everybody out there, we are trying out our new Geek History Lesson mics for the very first time. Now, this is going to, we decided to make it a little bit more of a relaxed episode because, you know, I want to make sure these mics work.
Yeah, these are the results of the Operation New Mics initiative. Yes,
and I want to point out now, everything is not going to sound. We're not in our permanent setup yet, so stuff will sound a little weird. I've already been noticing some pops and some plosives. We haven't figured that all yet. We hopefully will iron out all those kinks over the next couple of weeks. But we thought a relaxed episode in July, answering your questions, will be a nice way to do that. And we have to give special thanks to a certain Mind University student. We've talked about him on the podcast several times. Mr. Jeremy Skinner, who appears in a lot of the comments and a lot of the questions, and he's a great patron of Geek History Lesson. When he heard about our Operation New Mics, he asked us how much we needed and donated the difference. And that is the whole reason why we have these mics. And so I want to give a big shout out to him. He's at JLA Awesome. I think that's
JL Awesome.
JL Awesome, excuse me. Go give him a thanks. We'll probably tweet him out and make sure. And he's going to be on a future episode here very soon.
Yeah, we're just working out the logistics of that.
Also, a big shout out to his awesomely named son, Flash Skinner, for helping probably, cook dad dinner once or something while he did
for
this.
Being cute.
But again, hopefully we sound a little bit better, and we'll improve these over the next couple of weeks. So if there are any audio issues, that's why. But enough of that. You guys gave us a bunch of questions on our Facebook. Where's that, Ashley?
Facebook.com/Geek History Lesson.
Yes, and you gave us questions on our Twitter.
At GHL Podcast.
And you gave us questions on our Patreon.
Patreon.com/Jawiin. That's JAWIIN.
We should also tell, just in case, if this is your first Geek History Lesson episode, I apologize. But usually we are the podcast that goes through a topic, explains a topic, character, or construct in a little bit less than an hour. But today we're taking questions from our lovely Mind University students, because that's what we like to call. And, it's time for the Q&A session. It's time for office hours. Maybe we should call this office hours? Is that what we should call this?
Sure.
No one will know what it means.
I know what it means. Okay. I was going to say that this is like summer camp, right? Because we're casual. We're like people's friends. It's July.
Well, we also did this because we loved everybody's questions. We had a lot of great questions, and we have so many more great questions. Also, Ashley has told me that at the very end of this episode, she has a surprise for me. I don't know what the surprise is, but I'm very curious about this.
I don't know what you're talking about.
Oh, you told me that you had a surprise with the honor roll.
Okay.
Ashley forgot.
I don't know if it's a surprise because I literally told you what I was going to do, but okay.
Well, listeners, Ashley unconstructed the podcast. I was trying to set up a situation of a surprise, and Ashley completely improv denied me live on air.
You made me feel like I'd forgotten something.
I apologize.
Look,
I figured you would catch up.
I didn't graduate from UCB for nothing but to fail improv exercises for the rest of my life.
I figured you would pick up the clue.
Nope.
You did not at all.
Shout out to Mono Gapian, who taught me my last 2 levels. Love you.
You need to retake those lessons, my friend. Anyways, we have a surprise.
It's a surprise to everyone else, not a surprise to you.
Well, I was trying to be surprised, Ashley, because I've been the one that, never mind, nobody has any idea what we're talking about. Besides, stay tuned, because there will be a surprise to you, not to me, at the end of the episode. I don't get to join in your fun. Let's answer some damn questions.
Our first question
bring, bring.
Nope, I'm going to deny that right off the bat. Sorry to Jordan, who I know got excited.
I wanted to see what you would do. I'm sorry.
Nope.
All right, well, who's our first question? I apologize.
It's patron Brock Severson, great friend of the pod. who says the Universal Classic Monsters shared universe has had more duds than wins. However, with the recent success of The Invisible Man, the only movie Jason and Ashley have seen in quarantine, which other monsters? I added that. That wasn't Ashley.
I was actually quite impressed by Brock. I was like, how does he know that?
Which other monsters could work for today's audience? How could you update them? Is there one particular you have a pitch for?
So it's interesting. So it's funny because Ashley and I had that conversation
right after
the movie, and the one that I stumbled upon was Frankenstein.
Mm-hmm.
If you take it in the idea that Frankenstein is sort of a veteran of the War on Terror, and it's sort of Victor Frankenstein is, maybe in this instance I would make him a dad. Sure. And then it's the son who is the monster. So the monster is actually Frankenstein for the first time ever. And the idea that his son, sort of like what we saw with Cyborg and Silas Stone in Justice League, that the son gets injured and the dad, resurrects him and makes him of pieces of other soldiers. And it's like all their minds are fighting.
Yeah.
You had another one too. I can't remember what it was.
Yeah, I pitched a Dracula vampire idea, but I wanted it to be a female vampire instead of a male, and to make her like a religious figure or a powerful cult leader.
Yeah, cult leader, I think is what we talked about.
And instead of having, because Dracula classically collects wives, of flipping that dynamic and having her collect male consorts.
You could flip the dynamic of that cult that old Chloe from Smallville was involved in.
Nexium, say their names.
So
they suck.
You could sort of flip a version of that if you wanted to do that kind of thing. I think there are plenty of ways to update them. I think the thing that Invisible Man showed is that if you find the right idea, you can make it work. And I think the idea that Invisible Man chose, spoilers if you have not seen that movie.
This is science-based idea.
But yeah, it's sort of, they make it technology, whereas in the past it was always like, here's a potion and now you're invisible.
Is that how Kevin Bacon got invisible?
Well, he got invisible through a green screen. But I just remember all those clips of they would always show Kevin Bacon in this giant green screen suit, and then they showed how they mapped him out. I can't remember. It was something
that was Hollow Man, right?
It was Hollow Man.
Never seen it.
I saw it in theaters. They injected something into him.
Okay.
It's not great.
So very like Fantastic Four type approach
to
the situation. All right, we have another question from Patreon from Mr. Adam Roberson. Good friend, a lovely person on Instagram. What do you think is oh, there's a typo. I'm so sorry. What do you think is the area, okay, there's a, sorry.
All right, do we have this question?
Well, it is, but there's a typo in it. So I'm trying to read it and autocorrect it at the same time.
Okay.
Which is not shaming anything. It's just I'm having a brain
We
fart.
can give you time to write this down.
What do you think are the true qualities of a good writer and a good story?
What do we think are the qualities of a good story and a good writer?
Yes.
Interesting. I'd love to hear your opinion on this.
Okay, so for good writer, I would say lived experiences. I think you have to have experienced things and experience things outside of your comfort zone in order to be a great writer.
I agree with that.
Because you are being tasked with creating characters with points of views that could be completely outside of yourself. And if you have lived a number of experience, you've been shaped. But I also think that makes you more empathetic to other people, which is not to say that there aren't amazing writers who like Jane Austen, hardly ever left her hometown, and she's one of the most amazing writers of all time.
Well, I also want to point out, I want to add a little addendum to yours, that it also doesn't mean that just because you haven't lived it doesn't mean you can't write it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
No, yeah,
But I do agree with your point.
I don't think you have to only write about your own life experience or only write about people that look like you. We certainly haven't done that. But I think things like travel, I think things like reading, I think things like education and arts, and I think all of those things and experiencing all of those things opens your mind, and it kicks you out of your worldview so that every character that you create and every story you tell doesn't look like something that you lived.
Yeah.
Because Grant Morrison is one of the greatest storytellers of all time, and I don't know if he's done anything that he's ever written. But he's done some crazy stuff.
No, but if you go listen to any of his interviews, he talks about in his early 20s how he traveled Asia.
Yeah.
And did all and he kind of was like, I'm going to do all the weird meditation stuff just because why not? And that really opened his mind. And I mean, Jack London wrote about Alaska because he went to Alaska. Mark Twain wrote about like the Old West and stuff like that because he traveled the Old West.
And you'll be surprised, I think, what might strike you. But I guess curiosity is the quality I would expect in a good writer.
Yeah, I would say, I honestly think a good writer, especially, and this is very difficult in modern times because there are a lot of modern writers who all they've done is graduate college, then become a writer. And to me, I'm like, that will never, I think, what are you pulling from? Because you have to pull from something in your life. Again, like, yeah, Gene Roddenberry didn't travel the stars in a starship for the Federation.
Yeah.
But Gene Roddenberry flew planes across the world. He actually
Didn't he crash in a plane?
He survived a plane crash in Africa and walked miles to go get water.
Which we're not necessarily like advocating for as a life choice.
He
but...
was also a Los Angeles police cop.
Oh, dang.
For years in the 50s. So he had a lot of varied experiences before he ever wrote television. Gene Roddenberry didn't write television until his mid to late 30s.
Yeah, I mean, I also am very much on the train of like, let's normalize not being famous when you're 18 and not that doesn't define your whole life, but that's a whole other conversation.
But I think you can tell a difference. Like, I think, to me, a great writer is a journeyman.
Yeah.
Like, where like writing is sort of like, it is your main gig, but you do all this other weird stuff on the side. And that's why like it's hard to argue with like Stephen King, because Stephen King does all this other weird, like he lives in the woods because he does all this woodworking stuff. And he does like all this other weird main stuff that is not, he doesn't just write all the time, and I think that's the reason why he's so prolific, because you gotta have something else to pull from. And in terms of a good story,
it's theme, man. It's all theme.
Well, that's such a subjective question as well.
Sure, but we're answering it. So.
Yeah, I mean,
everything here, disclaimer, is our opinion.
Yeah,
it's nonsense.
One part of it is, it is all your theme. It's like, what is the actual story you're trying to tell? Because like, if you're not. If your whole story idea is like, I think it'd be cool, somebody karate chop somebody in a trench coat.
It's not a story.
It's not a story.
I mean, there are only really 7 archetypes of story, and everything else kind of falls beneath that umbrella, generally speaking. But one of the most celebrated books of the last year was a book of stories that were all connected by trees. I just bought it for Jason.
Yes.
So,
I forget the title.
You can do wild and crazy things, but I think you have to know what you're trying to say on the surface and then subtextually. And once you know that, every other decision that you have to make becomes a lot easier.
I was going to say the other thing I was going to say is that what makes a good story is it has to make you feel something. Because this is what I will say. I think any piece of entertainment is valid. Any story is valid if it makes a human being. I always say this about our books and my books and whatever. I always say, if you cried, laughed, or like just went, wow, once, success.
Yeah.
I succeeded because I read our stories and I read Super Soldiers and they affect me. And I know that if they affect me, then they've got to affect you. And that's to me always like a good story because I watch so many things. I read so many comics. I read so many books where I just put it down and I'm like, okay.
Yeah.
But you remember the ones where you're like, oh, and the one I'll say like is Superman Smashes the Klan. When I finished that book, I was like, holy wow, that is a piece of art.
Yeah. We've been talking a lot recently about what we think are pieces of art, actually. Thank you, Adam. Great question. Next is patron Cameron Miller, who says, who are the most underrated DC villains? Examples: Major Force, Cyborg Superman, and Mongol. He goes, these are mine.
Oh. He's definitely a 90s boy.
I'm gonna bet a lot of our patrons are.
Well, Major Force is the Kyle Rayner Green Lantern villain who killed Alex.
Cyborg Superman as well.
Yeah.
But you and I are 90s kids, so
I love Cyborg
Cameron,
Superman.
you're speaking right to our souls.
Cyborg Superman is underrated.
You gonna buy that Funko?
Yeah. Someday. Cyborg Superman was the lead villain of a major Superman event, and he's kind of been forgotten.
Yeah.
So yes, he is very underrated. Mongol, I would disagree with. I see Mongol in every storyline, and I get tired of him.
For a minute, I would have said the New Gods, but obviously, thanks to Mitch and Tom, they're very in the zeitgeist.
Mitch Gerrits and Tom King.
Yep.
Thank you.
Our close personal friends, Mitch and Tom.
Okay.
What?
Okay. Let me pick those names up.
I'll throw some more down. But obviously, they're in the zeitgeist. The movie's coming out, so I feel like
Was the question for villains, by the way?
Yes,
okay.
It was for villains. I would have also said Deathstroke for a really long time.
No, not anymore.
As like a huge... By the way, the day we're recording this is, I believe, the 40th anniversary of the New Teen Titans. First publication date.
I saw Marv Wolfman tweet about that.
Yeah. So, as like a Teen Titans stan, Deathstroke was always my answer, but Arrow Man bumped him up.
I mean,
I would have said Harley Quinn too before about 2008.
I'm going to go with Cyborg Superman. Dr. Polaris is another one that I think is very underrated. He's a very good Green Lantern villain, and I can't pull anybody else.
I will say there's TV villains I'd like to see come back. Like I'd like to see Pied Piper come back to the Flash.
Sure.
But yeah, that's tough. Also, you and I are not like super villain people, generally speaking.
No, not really.
Dr. Manhattan's an underrated villain.
So is Rorschach.
No, he's not. He is overrated.
Oh, he's overrated?
Fight me on Twitter. I won't answer you.
He's still a villain.
Man, they're all villains.
Yes, all of the Watchmen are villains.
I can't believe I just opened up a Watchmen conversation. Yep. Moving on, Facebook question from Joshua Van Dyne.
Who
says, what 5 Marvel and DC characters do you think deserve their own video game?
Oh, boy.
Daredevil.
I'm just going to say lists are very hard for these Q&A questions.
They are, because we have a lot of specific practices that we do when we
especially off the top of our heads.
Yeah, this is just like us throwing spaghetti at the wall.
Marvel video games?
Marvel or DC characters that we think deserve a video game.
Daredevil definitely. Daredevil needs a Spider-Man PS4 game. I think we talked about this before.
I think we talked about it on a live.
I'm still aching for a decent Superman game. As a Superman fan, this is a conversation that a friend of mine and I have all the time over text, because I can't believe that we don't have it. There's been so many bad Superman games, and I get it because he's so superpowered. Like you're like, how do you do that? I think you can do it. I mean, God of War. Yeah. Kratos is super powerful.
Yeah.
And it works.
I mean, same thing with Witcher.
Yeah.
I would say I am surprised that we don't have more Teen Titans Go, like the cartoon style video games. I know there have been a couple.
Fair.
But even more like mobile versions. Like I'm surprised there's not a Super Sons game.
Yeah.
I just think there's a lot to be mined for an all ages audience. And I know DC has really captured the adult audience with like I keep wanting to say DC's just because that's the book that's with Injustice.
Injustice was a huge hit. I mean, everything I've heard, they're gonna make an Injustice 3.
I'm also shocked that we didn't get Telltale style games tying into the Arrowverse, because to me, after the Batman game, you could have so easily like reskinned that with a Green Arrow story or a Flash story on top of it.
There was an Arrow game in development for years.
Yeah, I know.
And it was based on the Batman Rocksteady kind of platform. Yep. And then they abandoned it for some reason. And then from what I understand, they took a lot of that and they put it into Arkham Knight.
Sure. But I just think in terms of like overall brand synergy, it's like, well, where is that?
That game should have happened.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Where is like a kick butt Avengers game? Like Avengers are usually relegated.
It's coming.
To like MMO type games or cooperative computer games.
Everybody in September or later is like, Ashley, we have it.
Look,
it's that new. I don't know what's called.
It is out, but it's not out yet.
I think it's called at the time of this recording, it's not out.
Yeah, you're right.
It's called like Avengers Assemble or something like that.
You're right.
It has like Miss Marvel and a bunch of stuff.
We are like 4 Avengers movies deep.
Yeah, I mean,
it feels a little late in the day.
I'll be honest with you.
It's not to say it won't be amazing.
I'm very skeptical about that game because the trailers.
Oh, right, that's the one with all the overdesigned costumes.
Yes,
I have the Kamala.
All the costumes look terrible.
Jeremy, also for these microphones.
They look terrible. I hope it's good because there should be a great Avengers game. I hope Spider-Man PS4 opened the game for that. Opened the door for that. I kind of think Miles Morales game might open the door way far for that.
Yeah, I would love to see more Spider characters. Yeah, because obviously there's a great engine.
Should be I mean, I'm fingers crossed. I hope there's a Spider-Gwen cameo in the Miles game.
I'd love that, or
and
Silk, or Mayday. It'd be amazing.
And I hope that they're trying. I hope that they're trying to like stealth set up her game.
Yeah, that'd be really cool, especially with the new movie with all the spider ladies in it.
Yeah. Because then if you're playing the Spider-Gwen game, and I'm calling her Spider-Gwen because I think Ghost Spider is a terrible name, you should have a button where if you get in trouble every once in a while, because in Spider-Man PS4 you have this power called Focus Power, and you have a suit power, and depending on the different style of suit you're wearing, you can do a special thing. So the one I love is if I press down on both the joysticks, my suit power is that Peter jumps into the air and just spins in 360s and just fires webs at everything. So it covers everybody. So it gets like kind of all the people off your back. It's good for like getting you being overwhelmed by people.
Yeah.
So for me, if we're playing Spider-Gwen and I press down both my joysticks, I want my suit power to be that Spider-Ham comes in with a giant hammer and clears out people for me.
I love that. That's freaking amazing. You know, and on the back of you dropping all that amazing knowledge, I'm actually going to let our brains have a little respite, and we're going to take a quick break to tell you about something really, really amazing.
Hey, Geek History Lesson students, everyone has a podcast these days. Even cats have podcasts. And one question Ashley and I are always asked about podcasting is, how do you get advertisers on your podcast? Well, the sponsor of today's episode, Podcorn, is how we get our podcast ads. It's a simple and easy to use marketplace website where you scroll through the products that are looking for ads, you reply with your written pitch, make sure it has lots of fancy words, and if they like it, or if they owe you something like a favor at a mob wedding, boom, they'll advertise on your podcast. With Podcorn, there is no middleman to advertisers, and they take podcasts of all sizes. So your grandmother's podcast about pie baking can get sponsors on Podcorn. And you never give up any rights to your podcast because Podcorn is here to support you at every step and ensure you're protected and compensated for the work that you do for brands. Click the link in the show notes below to sign up to Podcorn and start browsing sponsorship opportunities right now. Go to podcorn.com/podcasters and get your podcast some ads. And now, back to the show.
And we're back. Wow. What an amazing ad.
You did such a good job.
I think so.
Yeah. All right, we got a couple more Facebook questions here.
By the way, everybody out there, I just want to say, I know sponsors and advertisers are annoying. I certainly get annoyed by them too, but they're what makes this podcast happen. So if you like this podcast and you support this podcast, consider going click that link, because advertisers do look at people that click the link, even if you don't buy it, even if you don't use it. Go click that link. It does make a huge difference.
Yeah.
Just want to point that out.
If you're someone who maybe wants to support us financially and you can't, that's a really, really easy way.
It's an easy...
That costs you nothing if you just click the link.
Yeah, sponsors pay attention to that. So,
good call.
Anyways, there you go. Enough about that. Let's get back to some questions.
All right. So I'm gonna mispronounce this person's name, and I'm so sorry.
These have been great questions, by the way. This is a great Q&A.
It was a good bunch of questions.
Yeah.
So I'm going to pronounce this. I'm pretty sure this is like an Irish or a Scottish name. And
Okay.
I'm going to pronounce it phonetically, and it's going to go poorly.
I'm looking forward to this.
Cathal O'Miochain? Please, if you just want to send me a little file of how to say your name, I'll do better in future.
All right.
I'm so sorry. So they have 3 questions, so we'll bust through these pretty quickly.
All right.
First question, similar to the Jurgen Perez 9016 Titans, what are the least successful or most forgotten rebooting of successful titles?
That is such a complicated question that I don't think I'm going to be able to pull it off of my top of my head.
So basically...
Wow. That's a good question.
It is a good question. We could do a whole lesson on this
He's
question.
talking about the Dan Jurgens Teen Titans run right when Dan Jurgens rebooted it with George Perez right before Jeff Johns rebooted it. By the way, that run is not terrible.
They put a note saying that they actually liked this run, just for the record. I think a lot of people... I do too.
I'm with you. It's not a terrible run.
But it's not as successful as New Teen Titans, for example. So I think they're looking for...
So a reboot that wasn't as successful
on a previously successful
Does anything come to mind for you?
I'm going to try to be very diplomatic about this, because I've never been put in the position where I've had to do something like this, take over a really successful title and try to do my best.
It's tough.
So I just want to say, like, as a fellow creator and as a fellow comic book writer, I'm not trying to disparage anyone.
Okay.
Okay. I would definitely say Teen Titans across the board suffers from this.
Oh, constant reboots.
Yeah, Teen Titans, the reboots are they're either amazing, like the new Teen Titans. Obviously, the first original run was really cute.
Ben Percy did a good job with
Jeff
it in
Johns,
DC Rebirth.
Titans run was good. Yeah, the beginning of that run is really good, but then there have been other creators who've come in or taken over or relaunched, where I think it's been diminishing returns.
Yeah.
I'll say a modern example. And this is with all.
You don't have to name names, by the way.
This is with all the love and if I name the title, people will be able to figure out who it is.
Okay.
With all the love and respect to everyone who worked on it, I think the new Young Justice run is going to be looked on this way.
As an unsuccessful reboot?
I do think so.
Interesting.
Okay. It is not critically being super well
Nobody's
received.
talking about it.
I will say it's beautiful.
The art's great.
And they've introduced a couple really cool new characters. Now, I'm not current on it, so maybe it's picked up, but because the original Young Justice series was so impactful, it's a high bar, and it's something that people wanted for the longest time. X-Men is another run that is just plagued with either very successful or very unsuccessful reboots, or like at the beginning of Marvel Now, the X-Men all started really good, and then they sort of lost their way after a little while.
I have a couple of titles here.
Let's do it.
And they're both Marvel. One of them that pops out to me is that during one of the all different Marvel whatevers, they gave James Robinson the Fantastic Four, and it was before.
We love James Robinson.
Yes, and it was when the Fantastic Four had the red costumes. Now, I understand why you do that, but it's not great. But it was right before Secret Wars where he wrote the run right where they ended Fantastic Four for the first time since 1960.
Oh, I remember.
And so he only got like 16 issues, and his run is actually pretty good. It's not that bad. And it's one of those things where you could see that he's kind of doing the Starman thing where he's setting up stuff for like issue 30 and issue 40. But they only gave him 16 issues.
Yeah.
I get the impression that he didn't know the title was ending.
Maybe not.
And
that's also the prerogative of the person who owns the IP, you know?
Then the other one is the sensational Spider-Man, the Dan Jurgens, Ben Reilly Spider-Man reboot.
Yeah.
That run, not as bad. Like, I know the Spider-Man Clone Saga has a lot of stink on it and people like to crap on it. And it's very true because it is a bad storyline. But there is good stuff in there. And when Ben Reilly finally steps up and becomes Spider-Man, there's a lot of good stuff in there because you could kind of tell the writers were re-energized because they were like, oh, Spider-Man's not married anymore. Spider-Man's this brand new person. Like we don't have to go to the Daily Bugle. Like Dan Jurgens introduced this coffee shop that Ben worked in. So he worked in a coffee shop, which is very 90s, but also a lot more modern to the 1990s than a newspaper.
I will say even the ones that were like, yeah, this one wasn't as good. There's always good stuff in it, right? Like
also the best Spider-Man costume of all time.
I mentioned Young Justice, and like Ginny Hex is an incredible character.
Ginny Hex is so good.
Teen Lantern is super good. And just because just because we're saying this, it doesn't. We're not disparaging.
No. Everybody loves every comic, or there's always somebody out there that loves every comic. But that's an interesting question. All right, I know we took
second question.
Yeah, we took a long time on that one. Oh boy.
Cast Jupiter Jet, and who direct, produce, and write?
Sophia Lillis and me and you on all the other three.
Yeah, there you go. Netflix can call us at any time.
Yep. Jupiter Jet and the Forgotten Radio, by the way.
Hitting previews next month,
yes.
August 2020.
Yes,
previews.
Our second Jupiter Jet adventure. It's going to hit comic book shops on October 7th.
Yes.
So pre-order. Go to your comic book shop.
If you are a Kickstarter backer, it's the person who answers the emails. Please check your email that is associated with your Kickstarter account because we send you rewards.
Yeah.
Go look at them.
So there you go.
And then third, which lesson, if any, did each of you most and least enjoy researching and making?
Oh boy, we got to remember our own episodes.
So this is tough because we have 319 episodes.
Yes.
And we're old and we can't remember things. Secondly, I'm going to say just as an odds game, there's probably more characters that we only had a passing interest or we were only sort of aware of.
Just by an odds game.
And then they popped off. Then ones that we were super, like the ones that I think we're going to say that we were super passionate about, were the ones that we already loved and knew a lot about the characters. Like I love doing Teen Titans. I love doing Kamala Khan. And the ones that are difficult are usually the Jedi and the Sith ones, which I did, were very hard because it was going through a lot of the legend stuff. The history of the Star Trek Enterprise was really hard because there's not a clear timeline on it. But there's none that I would say I never got anything out of, even characters that I admittedly did not like.
Yeah.
Usually doing the research, you find something that's interesting to you about
Ray
them,
Palmer
which is
was
a-
pretty
which is a
hard.
gift. Oh, yeah?
Mon-El was pretty hard
was
because
gonna say-
Mon-El was 5 reboots, and
Excuse
now
me.
it's 6.
Yeah, I was going to say, because you've done a lot of our more cosmic-y nonsense characters.
But for me, it's not. The 2 episodes that I keep coming back to are ones that I love teaching the Fantastic Four to you because I love the Fantastic Four, and I feel
Two-part
like
episode.
that episode. And go back to listen to that 2-part episode. We did a Fantastic Four month, and I think it's 4 of our best episodes. And it's just me pouring my heart out for why I love it. And also, I think it's very early on. It's in our first 50 episodes. Nightwing. When I taught Nightwing is another one where it's just it's me pouring my heart out about Nightwing.
Alrighty. We're going to move on to a new question asker.
Woot woot.
But it's also about Geek History Lessons, so that works out really nicely. Austin Lowhouse says, how long does it take to edit Geek History Lesson when you started? How long does it take now? Now, friends at home, I would like to put a little caveat on this question.
Oh, Lord. You love to do that.
And say that, Captain Caveat, say that we are going to answer this, but if you support us on Patreon at patreon.com/Jawiin for our Geek History Lesson Extra episode today, which is our additional podcast episode, we are going to talk about our tips for starting a podcast based on our experience doing Geek History Lessons. So we're going to do a lot of behind the scenes stuff there. So if you want to deep dive nitty gritty and help us keep the lights on, patreon.com/Jawiin. So Jason, you're the one who edits.
Yes, it is.
So
and I will let the listeners know we did try a brief period where Ashley tried to help edit. And
Can't do it.
It did not go well.
Can't do it.
It did not go well.
Too
So
dumb.
now I am still the only one that edits this podcast.
So in the beginning, how long did it take to edit? How long does it take now?
Well, when I think about editing, I think about the entire process. I think from taking the file and then all the way to uploading it to when I click uploading. So there's a lot of steps more than just editing it. It's doing the tags and whatever. But when we did this podcast, I had done a podcast before called Box Office Booze with a friend of mine. And we did the podcast for over I think we almost did for 2 years. And we edited everything. It was there were bumps and starts and ums and ahs and all this crazy stuff. And it drove me crazy. So when we did this show, I was I want to treat this like a live radio show where the only time we're going to edit something is if there's a curse word and sometimes those get by, or there's a major mistake. But otherwise, everything, it is we are live to tape. Nothing can change.
Well, people in real life and ah, and they take pauses and they misread questions, and that's okay. And I think it's okay to humanize that. I think that's fine.
So I don't know. It depends on the episodes that take the longest are the ones with guests, especially ones over Skype, because I spend a lot of time trying to make their Skype or their Zoom or their phone call recording sound the best that it can. So I don't know. It can take, honestly, just editing the file in the audio program, it can take anywhere. It's at a bare minimum of 5 minutes to sometimes it's 30
hours.
So sometimes it's an hour. Yeah. The the Strange Adventures, the Adam Strange one.
Yeah.
Where I had Tom King's file, I had Mitch Garrett's file, and I had Doc Shaner's file, and I had my file.
Yeah.
That thing took an hour and a half to edit. Just because I was going through and muting them and because for some weird reason you could hear Doc when he wasn't talking, so I turned him off.
Just the way his microphone was working.
Something. It was just something about the way it picked up the files. So I've got it pretty streamlined, but it does take some time.
There you go. Let's hop over to some Twitter questions.
Ooh, all right.
This first one comes from @Armando L. Ramir 2. I'm assuming that's supposed to be a Z, so I'm going to assume that's Ramirez. And he asks, of all the new rumors and speculation going on with the DCU, which rumor are you most excited about? A Batman Beyond theme movie where old Bruce Wayne is Michael Keaton, perhaps? They are playing to your love of Batman Beyond, Jason.
They know it. I love Batman Beyond. That's the only Mondo poster I own.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know much of the other rumors that are out there beside the Batman Beyond movie. Is there other rumors? I don't know.
There's none that I'm aware of. I mean, I guess to me the rumor is that Flashpoint is still happening.
Oh, I did hear about this Justice League Rebirth thing that everybody thinks that they're going to make Justice League 2 and they're going to call it Justice League Rebirth.
I mean, maybe.
and it's going to be like a rebooting of the Justice League. Yeah, I mean, I've been saying for years, I've been saying since 1999 that they should be making a Batman Beyond movie. And if we're going to get Michael Keaton in it, perfection.
You know, the rumor that I'm most interested in is that Wonder Woman 84 is coming out. That's the rumor that I'm hearing.
Is that a rumor? I mean, it's coming out.
At this
we just
point,
don't know when.
It's conjecture because we don't know when or how.
What a year, 2020.
That's what I'm looking.
See, on this, and this is the way this year is going. The next Wonder Woman is going to be called Wonder Woman 2020, just because it's going to be like this post-apocalyptic wasteland.
Ugh! Don't put that out in the universe. All right, we have a question from @Darth_Mischief.
Darth Mischief? That's a great Twitter name.
Anthony Perez. Do you think it's time for the MCU to introduce Sentry in a future film? I've always been fascinated with the idea of the Superman-like figure who's essentially been there from the jump, but no one remembers, even him. If they do, who would you cast? I'd pick Jensen Ackles. I don't know who that is.
Jensen Ackles is the supernatural guy who voiced the Red Hood in Batman.
Is he the one with the spiky hair or the floppy hair?
Spiky hair.
Oh, I kind of know.
He was also on Smallville.
I mean, I've never seen.
He's the one that's not Walker,
Smallville.
Texas Ranger.
I don't know what that means.
Well, there's a new Walker, Texas Ranger coming out, and the other one, the floppy hair guy. I forget his name. Anyways, what was this gentleman's name that asked her question?
Anthony Perez.
Anthony, no.
Dun, dun, dun.
So here's why.
Sure.
I love the Sentry. Ashley, do you know much about the Sentry?
Not much more than how he's described in this.
I'm going to put this out to our Mind University listeners. I love the Sentry. Mm-hmm. I would love to write a lesson on the Sentry. I own a Sentry action figure, one of the two they've made. But here's the thing. The Sentry is almost Marvel's Miracle Man. Now, if you get that reference, give yourself 10 comic book points. For everybody else, I will explain. Miracle Man was an Alan Moore series that was published mainly in the UK. Marvel now has the rights, although they'll never finish it. And it was basically about a Superman-like figure and, how his world had evolved. Mm-hmm. The Sentry is the same thing. The Sentry is this basic Superman-like character who is perplexed by this character called the Void. And eventually you learn that the Void is him. He is his own worst enemy. And the initial joke...
And then he murders a child.
In Marvel Man.
Yes.
He does, not in the Sentry.
Yes, sorry.
Yes, all right. We're going to leave Marvel Man and go away. We're only talking about the Sentry now. So the Sentry, created by Paul Jenkins, great writer. It was introduced as Marvel Knights, one of the greatest periods of Marvel Comics history. My friends, we would love to do a Marvel Knights episode if you want to throw that out. We would give you in perspective. We could bring in some of the people. I guarantee you we could get Jimmy Palmiotti for the Marvel Knights episode. It'd be fun. Anyways.
I hope
so. The Sentry was introduced as a story concept and also a deconstruction of comic books. So the Sentry popped up in modern Marvel time, and they did this amazing marketing thing where they released all these articles through Wizard, and Wizard was in on the thing where they said, when the Sentry was introduced, that the Sentry was like the last Marvel hero created by Stan Lee and Jack Kirby. They did an interview with Stan Lee, and Stan Lee was like, yeah, with the Sentry, like, we just never did anything with it, and we just didn't think it would work.
And it was a lie?
It was all a lie.
Oh, wow.
And you didn't learn until the final issue of issue 4 of the Sentry Marvel Knights comic series that it was all BS.
That's shady.
Yes.
That's shady AF.
But here's the thing. The story construct of the Sentry is that the idea is that he's the greatest hero of the Marvel Universe, but he also is the greatest villain because he's also the Void. Now, the Void exists because people know about it. If people don't know about the Sentry and they don't know about the Void cannot exist. So they made this whole thing that back in the 60s, the Marvel Universe, the Avengers and Mr. Fantastic did this thing so that everybody in the world would forget the Sentry ever existed.
Can I reframe this question for you?
Yes.
Would you want to see a Sentry story that was told not as part of the MCU?
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah. I think, yes.
Is the construct of the MCU your issue with the idea of this?
Well, it's also because like that storyline is so baked into comic books.
Yeah.
That
the gag of doing it in a movie would be much harder. Like, what are you going to do? Avid him into some old Avenger shots?
Well, because here's the two things you do, right?
Yeah.
One, the first thing you do is is one, you do it exactly like comic books, right? But I don't think that story construct works with the MCU because the MCU's only been around for 11 years.
Yeah.
So who cares, right? You know?
Well, let me tell you, a lot of people on the
I
internet
know,
care.
but I'm just saying it won't work.
Yeah.
And the second thing is what is he? Low rent Superman? If you don't do that, then he's just low rent Superman in the Avengers. And by the way, we've already seen in the MCU that they don't know how to handle a Superman because look at what they do with Captain Marvel. In Avengers Endgame, Captain Marvel is so powerful that they have to explain why she's off on the other side of the end of the galaxy until she shows up as the Deus Machina in Avengers Endgame. By the way, I love Avengers Endgame, so just chill on your comments there. But you can see they can't have her in the movie, so why would you create another character that is more powerful than her that could literally just go, whew, and Thanos is dead?
Yeah.
You know, it wouldn't work.
Sure.
You know, I think you're right. I think you stumbled on. If you're going to do this entry in live action, it's better to do it as standalone. But I don't think a Superman type figure can work in the MCU.
Fair.
So a very long answer, and I'm sorry, but that's my honest answer. That's what I think.
Alrighty, question from @spider_hawk who says, how are you two so awesome? Also,
Oh, thank you.
who would your dream guest professors on Geek History lesson be?
Actually, I'm very curious about your opinion on this.
Dream guest professor?
Yes.
Dan Jurgens?
Have we not had Dan on the podcast before?
No.
Oh, that's crazy. I thought we did. Oh, wow.
I don't think so.
All right.
I know we've wanted him for many episodes.
Yeah.
But,
I think we can get Dan.
yeah, but we want to be careful with what we bother him for.
Sure.
Dan would be one. We've had a lot of people who we wanted for a really long time. I mean, I don't know, like Shoot for the Moon, like Patty Jenkins.
I mean, I've said Damon Lindelof several times. I would love to like talk Lost at Damon Lindelof or watch him on HBO.
I'd love to have Yahya Abdul-Mateen.
Sure.
I think he would have a lot of really interesting things to say, and he's played 2 different superheroes now.
Sure.
Well, or comic book characters. I don't know. That's hard.
Yeah.
It's really a hard
Marv
question.
Wolfman, I think, would be a fun one.
I love Marv Wolfman.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, yeah, George Perez. Like any
Yeah.
luminaries that you love.
Mm-hmm.
I want
Grant Morrison would be a great guest.
I want to get Nicola Scott on at some point for something.
Oh, yeah, we can get Nicola.
You know, but she lives in Australia, so Tom Taylor's the same thing. Yeah. So I don't know. We have a list.
Yep.
Jason, how are you so awesome?
I'm not. I just fool people.
All right, we're gonna drop back to some Patreon questions.
All right.
Lee Carter asked, with the MCU and the CW shows no longer focusing on the importance of secret identities, were they ever? Do you think this will be the path comics will fully take in the years to come and make secret identities an idea of the past? I hope not.
Yeah. Okay. So Ashley, I want you to talk about this because I have a century-long diatribe about this.
Yeah.
So I'm very curious about your thoughts on this.
I think it's really this is like funny to me, where you're like, the CW show is no longer focusing on the importance of secret identity, because by the end of season 2 of The Flash, 185 people knew that Barry Allen was the Flash.
Basically, all of Central City
I mean,
knows that he's the Flash.
I wrote the Flash column for DCComics.com, and I wrote about how Barry kept unmasking himself.
Yeah,
because it's insane.
It was every single episode.
I hope not. I like the idea of secret identities. I know in a modern world with all the tech that we have, it would obviously be much harder to maintain. I don't go to superheroes for real life. I go to superheroes for fantasy and for soap operas and, you know, all of those heightened emotional states that we love about capes and tights. So I would say that I hope not, but I think that every story is individual, and there are some stories where the identity works. And there's some when it doesn't. I don't care if you wear a mask or not. I like a secret identity personally. Jason.
So
here, let me push the soapbox over to you.
So here's the thing. The reason why there are not secret identities in the Marvel Cinematic Universe is because they're government agents. Now, before I get all your comments where you're like, but they're not government agents, they didn't sign the Sokovia Accords and S.H.I.E.L.D. is not there. They're government agents. They talk to the Secretary of Defense.
I mean, Rhodey's straight up in the Army.
On the phone. Rhodey is in the Air Force. They have
Air Force, thank you.
They have a giant military complex with stealth planes in upper New York. They are sanctioned by the government. So you don't have secret identities when you're government agents. And you can see this because Spider-Man, the people who have secret identities are true vigilantes. That's why Spider-Man is the one that has the secret identity in that universe. And they even threw that away. But like people like Superman, Batman, and all those people, they're not government agents. They're not working for an agency. But like if you look
breaking the law.
But if you look at the MCU,
no, you're absolutely right.
They're basically government soldiers.
I mean, Natasha works for the government.
Natasha
as well.
and Hawkeye are both SHIELD agents.
Yeah.
But yeah, like it's interesting because when you were talking about Barry Allen, the Flash, he's one of the few superheroes. Like his mask would actually obscure his identity.
And look, I understand. I understand for like the construct of shows and of narrative. Like all your main cast members have to know. Yes. Or they're idiots. I do understand that. I just think on Flash it got so here's
and
ridiculous.
I'm gonna say this as somebody who is currently writing a comic book that is dealing with something like this.
Patrons know what you're talking about.
Yes, you'll see it later in this year. And I'm dealing with a Superman type character. The honest truth of the matter is that if anybody in the real world had any kind of superpowers and you decided to go out and be a superhero and you didn't have a secret identity, your house would be blown up immediately. The government would arrest you.
And your family.
And anybody that you've ever been friends with would probably be a target to be killed. It would be like so dangerous. So I don't think the construct is wrong. But it is, I don't think all heroes are going to suddenly go to, like, I'm going to be honest with you. Superman does not work
with a public identity.
With a public identity. It does not. The Daily Planet would be rubble in seconds.
There are Superman archetypes who would work. Like President Superman obviously works.
Yes. But you have to change it, right? So the reason like President Superman works because...
He's already a public figure.
Well, nobody knows that President Superman is Superman.
Yeah.
I know that's kind of weird, but nobody knows that the president is Superman.
Yeah.
So like he's keeping it secret, right? Or it's the idea that if you're going to do that, you have to be Superman. You have to be so fast and so secret that it's just like sort of miracles where they're like, oh my God, the tidal wave didn't hit us.
Yeah. Alrighty, patron Shane Tiefenbach, amazing name, says, can a non-Marvel or DC comic become a movie on par with the MCU?
Yes.
Well, I'm going to say right here, Shane, and I'm not saying that you're wrong, I think DC Comics have surpassed the MCU in their movie adaptations.
Oh, interesting. You're throwing out some heat there, Ashley.
I'm not specifically saying the DCEU versus the MCU, but I think between Dark Knight and Wonder Woman, I think Warner Bros. Has made the best superhero movies. I mean, personally, it's just my opinion.
I'm going to say this with you. Yeah, I in terms of that statement, it's very nothing in the MCU beats The Dark Knight.
No,
nothing, not one single MCU movie. That is very true. Because we were talking about, we were throwing out like pieces of art.
Yeah.
There is no piece of art that touches The Dark Knight.
Yeah.
In the MCU.
Yeah.
That is just such a seminal film.
Yeah.
I forgot what the question was. I'm sorry.
Can a non-Marvel or DC comic become a movie on par with the MCU? I think absolutely yes. I think what you're butting up against is budget.
Actually, I think we've already seen it. I think we saw it in 2010. It's called Kick-Ass.
Oh, I was like, Kingsman?
There you just named the second example. Also a comic book movie. There's two.
And I know Kingsman is more of a spy, but I mean James Bond and James Bond archetypes for all intents and purposes are superheroes.
Look again, here's the thing. Kingsman and Kingsman 2 both box office hits.
Yeah.
Kick-Ass 1 was a box office hit. I think Kick-Ass 2 bombed. But here's the other thing: if you can't measure by box office
alone, you absolutely cannot. No,
because
I mean, what about Scott Pilgrim versus the World?
Well, this is the thing that I hear out a lot. I also would call Scott Pilgrim versus the World a very successful adaptation, on par with anything in the MCU.
Yeah.
It's a great film.
Yeah.
It's interesting because people will throw out box office and they'll be like, well, if it didn't make $1 billion, and you're just like, man, not even every MCU movie has made. Iron Man 1 didn't make $1 billion. It made like $400 million.
Also, like to jump down that rabbit hole, like movies that are like critically acclaimed as some of the best movies ever made.
Have never made $1 billion.
Well, or even adjusted for inflation.
Yeah.
Like Casablanca didn't make that.
Yeah.
Wizard of Oz was a flop.
Jurassic Park didn't make $1 billion.
You know, and then look, like
everybody
I
loves
get
that movie.
The $1 billion club is really cool to belong to. Lord of the Rings never made $1 billion.
I think a lot of listeners, I think we push against. There's a lot of people give the MCU a lot of passes, and I love the MCU and I love a lot of those movies, but they're not
not
gold
infallible,
and they're not perfect. So I mean, I love Kick-Ass. I think it's a great movie. It was a success. It got a sequel. I love the Kingsman movies. So, and to be honest with you, I think they're just of equal quality of if anything in the MCU.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
You know, and I'm sure there will be some.
I think the Invincible movie is going to be as equal quality as the MCU as well.
I would say Chrononauts is probably going to be pretty popular.
The Huck movie, if done right, will do the same. We keep picking Mark Miller.
Look, Mark Miller is someone who is definitely not perfect. He's got some Millerisms that I really push against, but Mark Miller is good at what he does.
I'll tell you what.
I mean, there's even TV shows like I am so excited for Black Magic to finally get adapted to television.
Oh, yeah.
I know that's not the same metric, but.
Well, I'll tell you this, too. If it ever happens, a Spawn movie could be on par with the MCU.
I agree. Yeah, you're just looking for a budget on that.
Yeah, you're just looking for the right story.
Yeah, the right story, the right team.
Yeah.
You know, we've seen lots of movies that should have been difficult come out. Again, I'll go back to Lord of the Rings.
Yeah.
Really well. And those movies were made for nothing compared to how massive those productions were. Anyway, 2 more Patreon questions, both from Jordan Wiltshire. First question, if you could be the main showrunner for a DC live-action TV show, which would it be and what storyline would you introduce? Or which DC characters would you want to be the showrunner of if they got their own live-action TV series and why?
Isn't that basically the same question twice?
Well, I think one of them is like if there's one that's pre-existing that you would want to showrun versus if you wanted to.
Oh, okay.
I'm going to say this. I don't want to be a showrunner.
It's a hard job.
So, yeah, man.
Well, I'm going to say this. I don't know what the storyline to pitch because that's something that I'll come up when I'm paid when I want to do it because that's all, you know.
And the word adaptation is used very loosely.
I don't think any of the shows running I would want to do. Man, this is tough. Like, this is a question that you're like, I want to spend some time thinking about this.
My first answer, bad answer for like, what do you want to see adapted from DC is always Blue and Gold.
Oh, interesting.
Or a JLI.
Yeah. As a TV show. Oh, boy.
I think you could do it.
Okay.
I think you could do JLI as a TV show. Blue and Gold would have to be a movie. But I think you could do JLI as a TV show.
I mean,
like an adult cartoon.
I'll throw this out there because I always say it is Blue Beetle.
Yeah. Jaime Blue Beetle.
Jaime Reyes Blue Beetle. I want to tell the story of a Hispanic family or Latinx family living in El Paso, Texas in 2020. And I like the idea that the entire family knows that he's the superhero and they help him out with it. That's such an amazing idea. And of course, since I'm not a Latinx man and I never lived in El Paso, I would make sure that I filled my writer's room with at least a lot of voices that have experienced that.
At least half, yeah.
I would
do the Damon Lindelof
I would do the Damon Lindelof thing. But I think that story has like always resonated with me since I read it in like 2009.
I mean, I would also say that story now, I mean,
so timely.
What a truly wonderful representation of like an American family story.
It is the modern American family story
in a huge way.
I would love that's the show. Like that to me is like I keep looking at. I'm like, how is this not a show?
Okay, so when you get that,
yes,
this is me knocking on wood.
So basically, I would do his first 25 issues, Keith Given's first 25 issues.
When you get that, can I play the evil white lady aunt?
Oh, I can't remember her name. I know what you're talking about.
His like girlfriend's evil aunt. That's who I would like to play, please.
Depends on when I make it, because you might age yourself out. Either you might be too young or too old by the time.
Well,
you get
let's
there.
make it now.
Okay.
Next question from Jordan Wiltshire is evil white lady. That's my type.
Evil white lady.
Do you think DC will?
I think you'd make a better Tracy 13.
Thank you so much. That's so nice.
I'd age her up. I'd make Tracy the older girl so when Jaime's dad is like, she's too old for your son.
Yeah. That's funny. Thank you.
Yeah.
Jordan Wiltshire also asked, do you think DC will start another DC movie animated universe now that they have finished with Apocalypse War, or do you think they will just keep doing standalone movies? I believe the goss around town is that it's probably going to go back to, it's not goss, it's all over the internet.
I hate that word. The hot goss.
I think it's really funny.
I hate it.
I think what everybody thinks right now is that it's going to be going back to standalone.
I think they're going to standalones.
That's my preference, personally.
Me too.
But it's not to say if they started a new universe that it wouldn't be great.
Yeah, I mean...
We're going to watch them either way. So they win, I guess. They've got our money.
We watch every one of them because a new DC cartoon is always a good thing, no matter whether we don't like it or not. I actually think they're going to standalones because I have a feeling that their budget was probably cut again.
That's too bad because DC animated movies are special.
Well, all you have to do, I agree with you, and all you have to do is you can look down the list. You can
see it on the animation,
and each one keeps making less. Again, the home DVD market doesn't exist anymore.
Yeah, you're absolutely right.
It's all VOD or special events or things like that. So it's not as profitable as anymore. So yeah, standalone. I would rather them go. There are plenty of DC storylines that they could adapt and till the cows come home, and we would never run out of movies.
Alrighty, we are going for our last couple Facebook questions for this episode. Will J. Rev Brandt asks,
what a name.
Who would you recruit to your Guardians of the Galaxy team? Say top 3 picks. Mine would be Quasar, and they specify Avril Kincaid, Rocket, and Beta Ray Bill.
That's a nerd right there.
So if it was like our Guardians team. That's a great question.
Ooh.
We could probably do a full Guardians lineup, like our best Guardians of the Galaxy.
First pick. I want the Rick Jones Captain Marvel, the one from the 90s, the Peter David one where he had the star face and he had the nega bands.
Yeah.
He's in my Guardians of the Galaxy. I love that character. I wish he was Captain Marvel still. That's my number one.
Let's do this like a sports thing.
Sure, go. That's my draft.
Yes, thank you. I feel like I was at sports thing. I couldn't pull the word draft. I want Lady Sif.
Ooh.
For my first round draft pick.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Lady Sif.
Cosmic Geek characters are hard, dude.
I want what's her name? I want Frankie Ray, the Herald of Galactus.
Oh,
she's Cosmic. She's the golden.
Yes, I can't think
it's
of.
It's not. I'll look it up, but that's my second pick.
Okay. I want. God, I don't like cosmic stuff, so this is really hard. I want Sue Storm.
Nova. I didn't think that was right because the Nova Corps, but no, that's why I want Nova as my second. Who was your second?
Sue Storm.
Sue Storm.
Yeah.
Taking my baby.
Yeah, girl.
Sue Storm.
You should have picked her first.
All right.
Who's your third pick?
Lockjaw.
You took my sweet baby angel.
Lockjaw is my third, and that's my Guardians of the Galaxy.
My third will be Kamala Khan.
Oh, good pick.
Yeah.
Good pick.
So there you go.
Yep.
And the last Facebook question.
We should combine our teams. This should be like
great.
Somebody draw fan art of this.
All right.
I would read the hell out of this Guardians of the Galaxy book.
I would. If you draw fan art and send it to us, we'll send you something back.
Yeah, we'll give you a free GHL pin. I'm just saying it right there.
Gerardo Ernesto Gonzalez Bustos. What a fabulous name.
That is a great name.
Says, have you heard of Ruby? I think you will love it. Have you ever visited Mexico?
I have not visited Mexico. I want to.
We wanted to. We were
getting close.
Trying to go to Mexico this year.
When
I don't think it's going to happen, my friend. But let me tell you, we want to go.
We were planning a trip. Yes.
Do you have a guest room? Let us know. As for Ruby, I have watched a little bit of it. One of the cast members was revealed to be a severe sexual assaulter.
Oh, is this who I think?
Yes, it is. Okay. Which I will say has deterred me from going and watching more of it. It does not mean that the show is not amazing. It does not take away from anyone's fandom, love, or the quality of the art. But I think Ruby was impressive because it did anime in North America on a budget. And I think it has really gorgeous character designs.
Sure.
So
I've not seen it.
Jason's not an anime person. Alrighty. We have a couple more Twitter questions. We'll see if we get to them all. If not, we'll move them over to the next one. We got 4 Twitter questions, so we'll see. See. At Dan_Dryberg, I don't think so, my friend, says, thoughts on the DC EU multiverse with different Bats, Soups, and Wonder Woman, etc., whose arcs could start and conclude in a few movies so you can constantly get fresh takes on the characters because they're all in different universes. P.S. Love the show! All in caps.
Thank you.
Thank you, Night Owl.
I mean, DC embracing the multiverse is what they should have been doing from the beginning.
I agree.
It's the thing that makes them unique.
I think they were trying to be the MCU, but also not.
Yep.
And it didn't work out for them. So I love the idea of new Supes and Bats and Wonder Womans and Green Lanterns. I love the idea even more that every time we recast, it doesn't have to be Bruce Wayne and Clark Kent and Diana Prince. Give me a Red Hood movie. Give me a Nightwing movie. Give me a Super Sons movie. Give me a
Give me Val
movie.
Zod, Superman.
Yeah. Give me a Nubia movie.
There's so many of them. There's so many of them that I think could carry a trilogy. Like Red Sun could be a trilogy. Kingdom Come could be a trilogy.
Yeah.
Val Zod, as I said, from Earth 2 could be a trilogy. You could constantly
do Gods and Monsters or a version of that.
You could keep remaking the Justice League Trinity with brand new characters and just keep doing a new trilogy.
There you go.
I think fans would love it. It would be like comic book miniseries, but on the big screen. It'd be great.
I would love it.
We'd love it.
At Pernille N. Singh asks, do you think Henry Cavill will make a cameo in Shazam 2?
Nope.
I'm just going to be honest with you guys, friends. No, I don't think so. And honestly, I hope not. At Super Unicorn, if your username's longer than I'm sorry, the screenshot cut it off, says, for a crossover of DC and Marvel, what teams would you put together that you think would mash up well, being from different companies? The most obvious one to me is Teen Titans and X-Men.
Well, they've already done that one too. They did that in the 80s.
You're right.
I mean, JLA Avengers. I mean, come on.
Obvious ones.
That's the obvious one. Let's do JLA Avengers.
I don't know. Thunderbolts and Suicide Squad?
I guess. They're not quite the same, but yeah.
Green Lantern and
I don't
Nova
know.
Corps.
Yeah. Like,
this is the thing with comics, right? Is like, and this is the thing with the history of Marvel and DC, which all of those like Marvel stories and Super Gods, all those incredible nonfiction books really get into this, is they're always ripping each other off. They're always doing their version of insert thing here. I mean, here, let's get one that's really on the nose. Fantastic Four and Terrifics.
Sure.
I'd love to see that, though. I think they should have done that at the beginning of quarantine. I think it would have really helped boost sales.
I agree.
And here's our final question of the episode, and from Twitter, is from @SailorGains18, who says, what would your MCU and DCEU look like if you had control?
Oh, boy.
Let me tell you, friend, these are great questions that we do not have the time nor the wherewithal to answer.
That is like a 3-hour episode.
We do have an answer. We do have an episode, rather, called What If We Controlled Marvel Phase 4?
Yes, with Hal Rudnick.
Which we did with Hal Rudnick.
Yeah, it was a great episode.
Still timely. Phase 4 hasn't started yet.
Technically, no. Yeah, it's Black Widow, right?
So
Black Widow starts it, yeah.
So I would say go check that out if you're interested. And I think you just need to know that we would pay Henry Cavill however many monies he wanted to keep being Superman.
My biggest thing about the DCEU is that I would do what we talked about. I would embrace standalone movies. They all don't have to connect. Some of them can connect. Who cares? Multi-Supermans, multi-Batmans. Let's just make good movies.
Yeah.
And then on the MCU side, I mean, for me, it's like, it's not all about Spider-Man.
It's not all Spider-Man, and it's certainly not all about Iron Man.
And that's what I would direct the MCU away from, especially since they don't own Spider-Man. I would really push it towards the Fantastic Four. I would be like, I would build it towards Galactus. Galactus, I would lay that Galactus is coming just like Thanos, and I'd be like, you're not going to see Galactus for 15 movies.
Yeah, because what you're tasked with at the MCU is creating a more frightening threat than Thanos, which we spent 20 plus movies building toward.
And Galactus is going to look like he does with Jack Kirby. He's going to have the big prongs, but he's going to be. He could hold Earth in his palm. That's why he's a bigger threat.
Oh, and I'm also going to say that I think the MCU has wasted some really fabulous casting choices.
Like who? Any examples?
It is criminal that we don't have, and I know that you are a big fan of this character. We don't have a James Rhodes movie.
Hell yes, Ashley.
Because Don Cheadle is so fabulous. He's so wonderful in that part.
And Rhodey is such a great character.
And you and I talk about this a lot, and all the cool stuff that you could do with him. And he's in the army, and now he's wounded, so you can make the movie for injured veterans.
Yeah,
there's so much potential there.
He is such a perfect role model for everyone with disabilities.
Yep.
The fact that he had a disability in Civil War, he lost both his legs, and now he is still a valued member of the Avengers.
He's one of their leaders. He's one of their a senior statesman.
That would be the perfect movie to give to every wounded veteran.
And we have a high population of veterans post
and
Operation Iraqi
he's a
Freedom.
hero of color, which is like doubles down on it.
Yeah.
It would be such an amazing movie trilogy. And I can't believe they haven't done it.
I can't believe we don't even have one.
Yeah, not just one.
Yeah.
For God's sakes.
And I know he's
drives me crazy.
He's booked and blessed. He's on a TV show every single year. But I'm like, what? I think that's such a waste.
He also has the best looking Iron Man armor. Just gonna say that.
That's just a scientific fact.
Yeah, War Machine's design is so much better than Iron Man. Black and white just looks so much better on that armor.
Yeah. So there you go. Those are all our questions. Woo! We answered so many questions.
So Ashley, are we doing? Is there recommended reading for this? I don't think so. No. Yes. Yes. No.
You know what? We'll do some recommended reading. What I'll do is I will put up everything that Jason and I are reading right now.
Okay.
Jason, what are you reading right now? This is usually how I end Jason and Ashley's Excellent Adventures.
I don't know what I'm reading right now.
You're reading that Superboy book.
What's Oh yes, the 75 years collection of Superboy. Yes, that's what I'm reading.
Yeah, there you go.
All right.
And I'm reading, this is not geeky at all, Naturally Tan by Tan France. So that's going to be a recommended reading.
I guess. All right.
We'll go.
I mean, you could put it related to the questions. Like you could put the century up there.
I'm going to go put some stuff that we also referenced as well. Yes.
All right. So now we're moving to the part that I tried to say was a surprise at the beginning, but it's no longer a surprise. It's the honor roll.
I'm very good at improv.
And that's where if you go to Apple Podcasts or your Apple Podcast app and you leave us a 5-star review, we will read your review on the show, because 5-star reviews on Apple Podcasts bumps us up in the algorithm. It makes a big difference, and we want to thank you for that. So Ashley, what's the surprise that I already know about?
So I want to say, too, if you are an international listener, we do not have access to your iTunes. That doesn't mean that we don't still want 5-star reviews and we don't value them and we don't value your opinion. So if you send us a screenshot and tell us who you are and where you're from, we will read it. And so
where do they send that screenshot? You should tell them that.
To geekhistorylesson@gmail.com.
Yeah, there you go.
So
because they might just put it in the mail and we'll never get it.
I mean, if they want to print it out and mail it to the P.O. Box, I will put it on the wall. I will frame that.
Sure.
That'd be amazing. P.O. Box 16429, Encino, California, 91416, United States of America. Care of Jawiin. So today we have a collection of international reviews, which thankfully they all took pity on me and wrote in English.
Yay! So we have some international reviews.
Because I don't read Spanish.
Do we know what countries they're from?
We know what countries they are all from.
This is so cool. Our international listeners have shown up.
I want to say we got a big Mexico contingent with this next batch. So
muy bien.
Yeah. So we also got asked about it here. So we got to do a show in Mexico.
Me gusto.
Yes. Están bien. I'm very good at Spanish. So our first review from Mexico comes from Astaroth Gareth, who says, best class ever, 5 stars. This is an awesome way to dive into your favorite stories. They used a semicolon. I'm so impressed.
Why are you impressed by that?
Semicolons are just not common.
Okay.
So they use a semicolon and they use it correctly. So
you're like insulting this person's grammar.
The English major in me is like truly impressed.
You're like, oh, look at you, use the semicolon.
No, I just mean you don't see a lot of semicolons. Look, that's a compliment.
Okay, all right.
This is an awesome way to dive into your favorite stories, appreciate from another angle the ones that you might not have liked a lot on the first pass, and discover new ones. Hearing every episode is not only a lot of fun, but it is also literally a step into a larger world. Thank you guys for the hard work. I love to hear a lesson on the anime Neon Genesis Evangelion or Attack on Titan. May the Force be with you.
May the Force be with you, and congratulations on being our first international review. Bing, 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 bing.
I mean, not of ever, just of this batch. Remember we had all those Australians for a while?
That's fair. Sorry.
I would tell you this.
I jumped the gun.
I would love to do a Neon Genesis Evangelion or an Attack on Titan. Jason would not love to listen to those, so we'd have to bring on a guest for them.
Which is totally fine. We can do that.
Yeah. So our second review, also from Mexico, comes from, oh no, they only sent me the screenshot of what they wrote. They didn't send me their name.
Oh no.
I will go back in the email and I will find it and we'll shout you out on the next episode. But they said, love this podcast. Jason Lee recently pointed out that he wanted listeners from Mexico who listen to the show. So here I am. Oh, I guess you said
welcome, person.
I have been a happy listener since Ashley's episode on Gandalf 2014 and a patron for almost a year now. And I love it. Support this podcast on Patreon. Oh my God. Thank you so much for that kind review. And our last review comes from my homeland of Canada, from Sin Wicked, who wrote Comic Dinner Party Banter. I found GHL after Ashley's appearance on GNS is the Wednesday Club, and I wound up downloading the whole backlog while I was preparing for a flight to the West Coast. I feel that in my soul, my friend.
Oh, wow.
Through almost 250 episodes, I have learned about so many amazing titles and characters. The hosts are incredibly knowledgeable, and
Thank
recently I even got to show off my fancy new knowledge at a dinner party with friends while talking about Heroes Reborn, the Marvel event.
Boy.
Thanks, Jason and Ashley, and all of your fabulous guests.
Oh my God, I teared up a little bit hearing about this cocktail party talking about Heroes Reborn. Can I get an invite to that?
You'll have to ask Sin Wicked, our lovely Canadian who sent their review. And their review, they came to us from Halifax, Nova Scotia. Fun fact.
Still considered a foreign country.
Ashley Victoria Robinson has relatives in Halifax. Nova
Bienvenidos,
Scotia.
new international listeners.
Yes. What does that mean? Welcome?
Yes, it means welcome. Welcome into the Mind University Teachers Lounge.
What's going on in here today?
Over in the corner, we have a stack of books from Mr. Smithy.
What does Smithy teach?
Alternative investments.
Okay, so I found, so our second international 5-star review from Mexico
Yes.
Came from Ramon Fernandez. I'm going to ruin your last name. I'm so sorry. Ayarzagotia. He is a patron. He's been a patron for years.
Ramon, thank you.
And is a really, really lovely friend. So I just wanted to make sure I got his name out because it didn't appear in the screenshot that I saved.
Well, don't forget, everybody, again, Apple Podcasts, you can leave us a 5-star review. And again, if you're a national listener, you can email that in to us and we'll read it on the podcast because we like them so much. Don't forget to subscribe and download this podcast on all your favorite podcast apps. Spotify, Stitcher, SoundCloud, Apple, Overcast. We're even on Overcast. We're there. You can find us. We are everywhere. Go find us. Download us. You can find Ashley online at Twitter and Instagram at Ashley V Robinson. You can find me online at Jawiin at Jawiin. And also don't forget Jubberjet and the Forgotten Radio, our next comic book. Coming out October 7th at comic book shops. Go pre-order at your comic book shops right now. Even if they don't know what you're talking about this week, run in there. Be like, I want to order it now. I want to get it out there. It helps. It makes a big difference. And we thank you. We think you guys will enjoy it. That's it for the podcast. Do we do stick arounds on Q&As?
We don't typically.
So we're not doing a stick around. So
unless you want to chat about
something. Let's get the hell out of here. All right. Thank you so much for listening to Geek History Lesson. I really enjoy doing these Q&As. So I hope you guys enjoyed them. I am Jason. Sometimes